I'm not going to be doing emails while I'm on a Zoom meeting. I'm going to give you my full attention right now. And what does that do for teams? Teams feel seen. They feel heard. They feel like they matter. And when we feel like we matter, that's pretty conclusive in the evidence. We are more efficient at the work we do. We're more engaged at the work we do. And we can feel a sense of connection and healing.
How do nurse leaders protect well-being and build trust on their teams? Dr. Tim Cunningham offers practical ways to lead with abundance through authenticity, clear communication, and genuine care when certainty is hard to find. Today, we'll explore how trust grows one moment at a time. Welcome to the Lippincott Spark, Illuminating Nursing Education podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Drees. Join us as we ignite your passion for nursing education and leadership. We'll explore the latest trends, hear from expert nurses, and provide tools to keep you inspired. Let's dive into today's episode and continue your professional development journey together. Today, we're tackling a question every nurse leader is feeling right now. How do you lead with abundance when everything around you feels scarce? To explore that, I'm joined by Dr. Tim Cunningham, a nurse leader and humanitarian whose career has taken him from professional actor and clown to emergency trauma nurse, academic, and executive leader. He's worked in more than 20 countries advancing nurse well-being and resilience. So let's jump in and unpack what abundant leadership really looks like. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, Kelly, thank you so much. It's such a joy to be on this podcast, and it's great to see you again. It's been a few years.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. To set the stage for our conversation today, I'd love to start off by grounding us in the idea itself. So what is abundant leadership? What does it mean to you, and why is it especially relevant in today's healthcare landscape?
Abundant leadership to me, for one, is the fact it's already here. And it's all around us. And I think some of our strongest leaders today, both in nursing and in other aspects of healthcare, have been leading abundantly for a long time. They just haven't gotten the credit that they deserve. Abundant leadership says this: when there's a crisis, when there's an issue, the first response is, let's see who we have around the table. We've got all these collective years of experience. We've got all these wise people around us. How do we address this idea head on? Whereas scarcity leadership says, oh, we can't do this. We've never done it this way. We hear that in nursing all the time. Why are we not doing this new thing? Because we've never done it this way. And I think what's hard about it, healthcare, Kelly, as you know, is a business. Business is about supply and demand. There's this really old book published in 1776 called The Wealth of Nations by this guy named Adam Smith. It's a snoozer. Anyone listening that has trouble sleeping, pick it up. It's long, it's tedious, but it talks about how business functions, supply and demand. Business functions on one principle, and that is scarcity. So if you don't have enough of something, you can charge more for it. If you don't have, or even if you have enough, if you act like you don't have enough, you can charge more. So like, abundance is anathema, the opposite of scarcity. And yet as business leaders, as nurse faculty, as nurses, we're raised in a world that only thinks about scarcity. So abundance is here. We have to put it in the forefront, and we can.
I think that framing really helps us to bring that concept to life. And I'm curious how this actually shows up beyond the theory. So especially in the real world. And I know you've worked in crisis response across many, many settings, and that is just absolutely impressive, your work. Can you share a moment where abundance showed up even in the middle of scarcity?
You know, as I've thought about that, I've experienced abundance in many places around the world, from working with people with Ebola in the West Africa Ebola outbreak to working in crisis responses after the first Haiti earthquake or after Typhoon Yolanda in the Philippines. When folks show up to help people, they lead from a place of abundance, even if resources are lacking. One specific example that comes to mind, and I'm wearing this pin if anybody's watching this podcast, it represents an organization called Ed Camp Ukraine. And just a couple months ago, I had the privilege of working in Ukraine. We were in Kharkiv, right on the Russia-Ukrainian border. There were literally air raid sirens happening about every 4 hours when Russian missiles would come into Ukrainian airspace. This has been going on to date for 4 years. And this nonprofit that I was working with has committed to teaching compassion to school-age children, K through 12, regardless of what's going on, whether they're teaching classes in the subway stations, which are safe places when the missiles land, whether they're teaching classes remotely. They support 50,000 teachers who support over 200,000 kids. These folks literally have nothing in many ways, and yet they realize that if we lose a sense of compassion, and compassion is the source of abundance, if we lose that, we lose everything. So that's a great example. And these courageous leaders who are showing up every day who say, while we're still alive, we can teach compassion, because compassion will help our next generation think differently and hopefully end wars and hopefully help us heal ourselves and those around us.
Yeah, that's a powerful example. And I think in nursing education, how are we able to weave that into our curriculum? How do we teach that to nursing students and lead by example, right? And for our nursing faculty to model that behavior as well. So it really highlights how leadership shows up under pressure and kind of staying in that space for a moment during prolonged periods of stress. I think even the pandemic, right? Very stressful time and uncertainty. How can specifically academic nurse leaders support resilience and well-being with their teams? Where does creativity fit into that work?
It fits in two ways, really. The first way, and it has to begin this way, is the individual leader needs to practice. They need to believe in that. So what is a daily practice? I've co-authored a couple books on self-care. I give a lot of keynotes on self-care and community care. It really does begin in what is your practice in caring for yourself? Now, that doesn't need to take 45 minutes of meditation a day, 5 days a week. There's good evidence behind it, but who's got time for that? I call it microdosing self-care. You can do small practices every single day. The monks just finished walking from Texas to Washington, D.C. And if you've not followed it, check it out. It's so inspiring. And it's a peace walk. It's a non-political peace walk. But they shared a message at many of their stops. And the message was simple. Put down your phone. Put down your phone. When you wake up in the morning, don't go right to your phone. Take some time to sip your tea. Take some time to watch the sunrise. Take some time to feel your body. Pay attention to your body and your mind before you jump into the go, 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 go. Scarcity mindset says we don't have enough time. Abundant mindset says we can. So leaders need a self-care practice, which means slowing down, paying attention to what's in front of you, how it's in front of you. As you build that practice in your mind, how does that translate to teams? One clear way, and leaders that I learned from during the pandemic did this really well, they had the courage and the vulnerability to veer off of agenda. If the agenda says we have to do these things, but if someone arrives at that meeting and is feeling in a certain way, the strongest and most efficient leaders I know have the courage to say, let's pause and let's address this. Let's talk about this. Let's give you, Kelly, the attention, the eye contact. I'm not going to be doing emails while I'm on a Zoom meeting. I'm going to give you my full attention right now. And what does that do for teams? Teams feel seen. They feel heard. They feel like they matter. And when we feel like we matter, that's pretty conclusive in the evidence. We are more efficient at the work we do. We're more engaged at the work we do. And we can feel a sense of connection and healing. So leaders, you got to do the work first. And then when you do it, it's about truly slowing down and seeing your teams, which you can. And some of our strongest nursing leaders around the US that I have the opportunity to work with do that every single day.
I love that. And it's about that great situational awareness and paying attention, right?
For sure.
Pay attention. What is happening with your teams? Take the temperature. There's sometimes, you, as a leader, you need to turn the heat up a little bit. It's accreditation. It's all hands on deck. This is a highly, sometimes stressful situation. But then you need to learn, I think, also how to turn down that temperature and to really make sure that you're aware of how your team is feeling about situation. Change, right?
That's exactly right. That makes me think about, as nurses, and I think nurses are probably the best trained to be good leaders of any profession, because as well as I, that as clinical nurses, we develop what we call the sixth sense. And that comes after a few years of practice, but that's that sense of when you walk into a patient care room and your guts just tell you something's about to go down. So you grab that ambu bag and you're ready to resuscitate it. And there's no good, we just know it and we learn it over time. So nursing leaders, how do you apply that same sixth sense, feel it, trust your guts. And this is the hard part, Kelly, as a nurse leader, have the courage to push against the mold that says you have to act like a CEO or you have to act this certain way. No, you act like you. Trust your guts. And when you do that, your team is going to feel more whole and more themselves. And in the long run, and there's evidence behind this, you're actually going to get more done. And in the long run, because healthcare is business, you're going to generate more revenue over time if you actually slow down and trust your guts.
You know, I had asked one of the leaders that I worked with, she was a president of a university, and I said, how do you lead with that courage? You know, when you're trying to move the needle and kind of challenge that status quo. And she said, lead with integrity. Make sure you lead with integrity. You can have charisma and unwavering faith and really that cheerleader for your team, but it's really about integrity too, that you can lay your head on that pillow at night and know that you did the right thing. And sometimes it's not always easy, right? It's being able to do that right thing and to break down some of those barriers, but it takes courage.
Yeah, I read this interesting study. I'm preparing a TEDx talk and I'm working on a compassion book. Got a couple things going on. So I've been reading a lot of research, and I found one study that found that when folks act with integrity and when they're present in their own integrity and with their teams, some folks have reported feeling a sense of time, like slowing down, where they feel like when I'm focused and in it, I actually have more time to do what I think I need to do. And Kelly, that's abundance right there in our own minds. And so I would argue that scarcity mindset does not like integrity. Abundant mindset does. And then when you're thinking abundantly, you can do more. And within that, you can weave in compassion. And I think the world needs a lot more of that right now.
Just kind of following your work, you've touched so many lives and that human elements of leadership, particularly how leaders show up for their people. And that kind of brings me to another essential piece. So in times of crisis, what are some practical ways leaders can build and sustain trust? Because, you know, you're charged with being professional. You're the leader. You don't have the luxury of breaking down and, you know, sobbing and, you know, coming unglued. And again, it's vulnerability, but I think there needs to be some authenticity in what you're dealing with. How do leaders build and sustain trust?
Yeah, there are a few ways to do that. And I say nurses are best prone to be leaders because of what we learned clinically as nurses. I would also say actors can be great leaders. And I studied as a professional actor before I became a nurse. But part of my acting training was, even though you're playing a role in a character, you have to remain authentic to yourself at the same time. And that sounds like a bit of a paradox, but by being yourself, that's how you stay focused, how you listen, how you pay attention. There are a few, I think, very simple things that leaders can do to build out that broader sense of trust. One comes from the work of Dr. Rana Adish. In one of her books, she talks about when she's working with residents. She's an attending physician. When residents come and they round and they come to her and their team and they start to say, you know, case, whatever, in room, whatever, she'll pause and say, one, what's their name? And then she'll ask, what's the color of their eyes?
Yes.
And if the residents don't know, they have to go back, they have to look and come back. And what that does is that locks you in with the people you're connecting with. So I would say for leaders, especially in times of crisis, what is the color of the eyes of the person you're speaking with? Because that flips your brain, slows you down for a nanosecond, and draws you in and connects you. Secondly, you made an interesting comment about, as leaders, we don't have time to let it out. We don't have time to cry. We don't have time to show it. I'm gonna respectfully disagree. Now, we have to know when the time is right.
When to do it.
That's
exactly.
key.
Exactly.
But I think leaders that are able to do that. So maybe it's not in front of your whole team, but it's then when you're having that one-on-one with teammates to say, this is where I'm at, work with me. I think that builds miles and miles of trust that you'll never get by lecturing at your team. And then thirdly, what I've learned as a leader, and I've had a couple executive roles that have taught me so much about, you know, leading. And I led teams through the pandemic. I helped stand up an Office of Wellbeing for 35,000 team members during the pandemic. And in doing that, I learned a key lesson of, as leaders, we need to complain up, never down. Which is, as things are not working well for the teams that are reporting up to us, we show up, We listen. We don't make promises we can't keep. We say, I'm working on it. I'm looking at it. We're authentic. But when issues arise, we have to have the courage to complain up to the folks that we're reporting to, be like, this is not working. So we can take that frustration, that energy up, but you have to be courageous with that, because we live in a scarce environment where people feel like, well, I might get fired if I say this to my boss. Suck it up, Buttercup. If you're truly supporting your team, be authentic. Don't be mean. What does Brene Brown say? Clear is kind. Be clear, and direct. That's how we function in crises. That's how it worked when we were working, the teams I worked with in the West Africa Ebola outbreak. When we weren't clear, literally patients died. And when we were clear, we were able to help sustain some lives that we otherwise wouldn't be able to. But we had to be clear, we had to be direct, and we had to be courageous.
And I think about, someone can't change something if they don't know about it, right? To be able to have those courageous conversations, those authentic conversations, to say, here's the behavior that is expected. Here's what we're seeing. Here's the gap. Let's talk about this. What are you experiencing? And using that humanistic approach to seek to really understand first before leaders just jump in and, reprimand or judge what might be going on. And I feel that that's a really good way to, like you said, to be direct, to be kind, and sometimes bringing calm to chaos, because it's tough trying to navigate any healthcare landscape. And I'll say, whether you're in practice or academia.
Yeah. Kelly, if you're in a chaotic setting, and if you show up chaotic as a leader, adding to chaos never reduces the chaos. So at a minimum, to your point, we need to show up calm, cool, and collected. And that goes all the way back to, what is your self-care practice? What is your community care practice? How are you grounding yourself when you begin your days, so that you can show up and be present? And then you have the vulnerability to ask questions, like you said, not to have the right answer, but to ask questions to seek understanding. And that builds trust.
To be your best self, right? Be your best self every day. That can be a little daunting when you're in the scarcity and you're in the chaos and you're in all that. But like you said before, to take a moment to pause, put down your phone, use that microdosing, and start to take those little steps to care for yourself so you can care for others. I think about faculty. We're charged with supporting students, but who supports the faculty?
Exactly.
Who, right?
Yeah. And if you're not practicing this stuff when times are good, you're already behind the 8 ball. Which is to say, and especially faculty, I'm thinking all the way back, my co-authored book on self-care, we talked a lot about that. We need to infuse self-care practices in learners from day one of their nursing education. So when many of them become faculty, they already have the habits in place that they've built when times are good. So when times are bad, you can rely on it. Practice, 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 practice.
I think those principles feel especially important when leaders are balancing their values with real kind of constraints. And I'd like to shift the lens specifically to academia. Many of our listeners are faculty and program chairs, program directors, sim coordinators. You've got deans, associate deans. So for these academic faculty and the leaders facing limited resources, what does adopting abundance mindset actually look like at the organizational level?
It goes back again to microdosing. And I think as faculty especially, what are the ways that you can microdose compassion practices into the classroom setting if you're teaching faculty? Self-care practices. There's a gobs of evidence on practices like narrative medicine, beginning a class or a session with a brief 3-minute writing prompt. Neuroscience shows that changes the brain, changes the way we think, helps us see that there's more abundance in the time that we have. I think something, when I worked as faculty at the University of Virginia, and as I'm connected with many faculty members across the US now, there's still this idea in nursing school that we have to teach to the test, teaching to the NCLEX, because there's this metric focused on NCLEX pass rates. All right, that's a reality that we're facing. How do you courageously push against that and then infuse other aspects of things that really matter, like professionalism? We have so many nurses graduating from nursing programs who, before you know it, are charge nurses, nurse managers, unit directors, and they've not had a lot of professionalism, education, and training. So infusing those little things into the practice trusting the process. And Kelly, I want to go back to something we were talking about earlier with leadership, having the courage to ask for help. Sometimes academia and nursing can be a little cutthroat, can be a little not so pleasant. And how do we shift that, especially folks who are new to the profession and new academics listening in? Can you build the courage to ask for help? Now, my therapist would be smiling because she keeps telling me I need to work on asking for help. It's not easy to do.
It's not easy.
It's a lifelong
You feel vulnerable,
practice.
right? You feel vulnerable, like, what's wrong with me? I need help. It's uncomfortable because you want to have the answers and you want to be able to be resourceful and find solutions. But sometimes you get stuck, and I think about kind of your own board of directors. Who's on your own personal board of directors that are at the table that you can tap into? At one point, you need some professional, how do I handle this situation? Then you need another board member who might lift you up and give you a little shot in the arm because you're down. You know, everyone serves a different purpose, right? But who are those people in your life? And I just reached out. I'm going to tell you this. I just reached out to a colleague of mine day before yesterday. And I said, and it was hard because I thought I can handle this. But I needed some perspective. And I called him up and I said, I'd really like your advice on this. And I told him the situation and I said, how would you handle this? Can you give me some perspectives on what's going on here? And he told me his perspective, kind of the lens he looked through. And then he paused and said, after we were done talking, he said, you know what? Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for bringing that to me and reminding me that I should probably do more and reach out more often to colleagues when I have something that I'm trying to navigate. And I'm not really good at that. So thank you for trusting me with this conversation and allowing me to help you. And I thought that was nice. He said that, but I thought, we don't do that often.
We don't. And how good did you feel, and how good did he feel, it sounds like. And these moments of, especially as we grow in academia, we have to keep feeling good. And that's not this hedonic idea that everything you do has to bring pleasure and feel good. No, but find those little moments that do make you feel good. The moment that you took to sit with your student a little bit longer, even though you knew you were late on a Zoom call for your faculty, your monthly faculty meeting. Are you really going to get anything done in that meeting anyways? Spend the time with that student and then you'll catch up.
And as I think leaders navigate all of this change and complexity, and many are looking for ways to stay grounded themselves. I know you've written wonderful books. I love them. And as you talk about practices and tools and frameworks, can you give us a few examples that help you to return to kind of staying grounded and adaptable in this changing environment?
Yeah. And there are a few frameworks I'd like to talk about. Maybe I'll go with sort of three, one at the individual level, one at the team level, and then one at the professional level that's actually pretty new. And I'm really excited to share because I think it's going to change the way we look at academic nursing and nurse leadership. First, at the personal level, find what brings you joy. Is that art? Is that music? Is that listening to music? Is that engaging in the arts? Is that exercise? Is that how you move your body? Know what that is. Give yourself the permission to experience that daily, even if it's 5 minutes. Make it your own time. Roshi Joan Halifax, in her book, The Edge States, writes about this idea of pathological altruism, where we are so altruistic, we cause harm to ourselves because we give, go. If you are alive, I guarantee you have 5 minutes during the day where you can do something for yourself. So that initial framework, some people call it self-care. I'd rather call it community care because as you do it, you're going to better care for your community. Second, from the team perspective, the framework of the idea of abundance in that you have your team, which means everyone on your team has done something to get to this table. You might not always get along with everyone, but everyone has put the effort and energy in. So begin your work recognizing that we can face off with this because we have a team of people with minds and creativity. Frame your work beginning that way. A way to help that frame keep growing. And there's a great body of evidence on gratitude. When I was at the University of Virginia, my dean, Dory Fontaine, loved writing handwritten notes. And every now and then I'd come to my office and there'd be an envelope on my desk with a handwritten note that said, Tim, thanks so much for the lecture you gave to XYZ class 3 months ago. Students are still telling me they loved it. As a leader, and that didn't take her long at all. As
it meant
leaders,
so much,
and
right?
It meant so much to me because I felt seen and like I mattered. So from the team perspective, begin with abundance, knowing that we can handle this because our team is here for a reason. And 2, keep feeding that abundance with specific and intentional notes of gratitude. Thirdly, as we build this out, and one thing I'm excited about, and this is more sort of administrative, and it's a systems change, is we need to look at how we measure abundance. We need to look at how we certify leadership and professionalism. There's a new organization that I'm learning about called the Professional Nurse Validation Company that has actually built a new credential, the PVN, or Professionally Validated Nurse. I think it goes live in June as I learn more about it, but it's essentially an exam, certification exam that learners, new career nurses can take after they pass the NCLEX that validates their competency over all 10 AAC and essentials, which sort of covers, the NCLEX does a great job covering patient-centered care. Awesome. But we don't really have a good certification exam that covers the other essentials. This does. And what this does is, it's a piece of paper. You have to study for it. It kind of fits the mold of, this is what nurses do, but this is what nurses do. And it can give the new career nurse who's in their career for a year or two a leg up to say, I am validated. I can grow as a leader. I've learned these essentials outside of work while I'm learning my professional practice, my clinical practice. And it sort of is a way to help new nurses grow and leaders recognize, oh, this nurse really wants to move forward. Let me put more resources behind them and support them. PVN is one of the ways. I'm excited because it's new and I'm learning about it, but there's so many other ways that we can think about how do we give our teammates a leg up to say, you matter, you're good enough, you're wise enough, you're strong enough. And as leaders and academics, as we do that, then our learners come back to us with even more, and then we can better achieve the outcomes we're striving for because we feel like we matter.
Wouldn't it be great if the academic dean or associate dean would really support that type of certification to be able to fund it under professional development, and just like you would CNE, the certified nurse educator or certification?
Absolutely. And engineers do it. So, you graduate engineering school and you can sit for a PE, a professional engineering exam. Architecture schools do it. So let's do that with nursing because, again, and I'm not just blowing smoke towards our profession. I really believe nurses are the best prepared to be leaders because of our early clinical experiences, because of the compassion that we learn in the work to try to heal the world. And isn't that the kind of leader you want on all tables?
So, Tim, as we begin to wrap up, I'd love to look ahead for a moment. So as you think about emerging nurse leaders, what's one piece of wisdom you'd like them to carry with them as they lead with purpose and resilience? In other words, what spark would you love to ignite in our listeners today?
My spark that I'd love to share with listeners is, 1, know your joy. Manifest that joy in an object, in something that you can physically keep with you in your office, something that reminds you of a joy in your life, a picture of a family member, an object that you maybe picked up while you're traveling. Have that as a grounding joy. And when you look at that thing, whatever that thing is, remember and tell this to yourself. Maybe whisper it, don't say it loudly, because if you say it out loud, people might think you're crazy. Tell yourself every time you see this, I'm good enough, I am wise enough, and I am strong enough. And you can remember, enough doesn't mean perfect. Forget perfect. Enough means right here and right now, I'm here for a reason, and that is enough for whatever comes my way. Find that joy, give it a name, give it an object, go to that object, and every time you see it, I'm good enough, I'm wise enough, and I'm strong enough.
Thank you so much, Tim, for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. We've explored how leaders can cultivate abundance even in times of scarcity, while fostering trust, resilience, and compassion through creativity. Thanks again, Tim. It's been a true pleasure.
Great to chat with you, Kelly, and thanks for sharing this podcast with the world. We need to keep hearing your voice and learning from all the great folks you bring on.
Thank you for joining the Lippincott Spark, Illuminating Nursing Education podcast. Enjoy this episode, subscribe, share, and leave us a 5-star review. For more information, click on the link below to learn more about Lippincott Nursing products and services. Until next time, keep leading, learning, and making a difference in nursing education.